Bradley, it took 19 months, but I finally did it, my friend. I finally unlocked a huge level in this life of ours. And
really?
I tried absent-mindedly, Brad, to drink my coffee while my mask was on. That was a proud moment for me.
You actually did that? You put it right up?
I went into a coffee shop, got a coffee, was walking back to my car, forgot that I had my mask on. I was like, oh boy, I'm very excited. I was just kind of like a kid, like, oh boy, I'm real excited for this coffee. Oh boy, this coffee's sure gonna be good. Just immediately tipped it right into my mask. Right into my mask.
And so, of course, it slides all the way down your shirt. Now you've got coffee shirt.
Well, yeah, it was not pretty. I more often than I can count, I go from, because it's Los Angeles, I often have to get in the car. I often, probably 3 times out of 10, end up with a little bit of coffee either on my chair, on me, on my car, whatever. I'm like a kindergartner. You can't give me a coffee and expect me to get in a car and have it work out all right. It's not good.
You know what? I just had a great business idea, because I know there has been clearly some companies that have made a good amount of money making and marketing masks, because of course everybody's buying masks, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to come out with a mask and a matching bib that I can sell to people like you.
No, what I need is the full, what is it called? The PPE. I need to just be covered in plastic when I go to get a coffee. That's what I need.
A hazmat suit.
That's right. Well, on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of the comics documentary Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. And a big reminder that this show is going out live to our super friends over the VIP Lounge over at ComicLab Live Gab. And you can join us every week. The show goes out live over at patreon.com/comiclab. And the shows are archived so if you miss it for work or school or whatever life throws your way, you can check out the archives of these live recorded shows, the video recorded shows. And Brad, who is our special sponsor for today? Who is our special little love bugs?
You know, I've got this big smile on my face, so I'm just about getting ready to talk about Wacom, our good friends over at wacom.com, the makers of the powerful, portable, professional Wacom One.
The Wacom One, which both Brad and I have and use on the regular. In fact, I have to say, Brad, I was using it last night, I say, on the couch while I was watching Thor Ragnarok, one of the best of the old Marvel movies. On the couch with the Wacom One. I got to say, dang pleasant to sit there.
And did you spill any coffee on it? That's the question.
That's the main. Well, I think that's a given at this point. But here's the thing that I love about the Wacom One is that in the past, I have owned many a device where it hots up the crotch like nobody's business. But that Wacom One, listen, I got to tell you, this is not a small consideration for me. Nothing is warm, nothing is untoward or uncomfortable. It is a pleasant experience from start to finish. I can do a 2-hour sketch. I still remain fresh as a daisy. It's amazing.
I'm just sitting here laughing because we just got Wacom to sign for their next sponsorship, so that ink is dry. I'm picturing them listening to this and saying, wait a minute, what are we getting into? Another 3 months of this?
Well, listen, it pays to talk about the real world stuff. Is that when I use it, it is pleasant as heck. It also much like paper itself, it becomes, you forget that there is an electronic aspect to it, I guess is what I'm getting at. Because remember, the first generation of these things that we had 15 years ago or so, there was a massive fan on it, so it was noisy as heck. It was hot as heck, so your legs and your thighs would get super warm, so you would put it on the table. That is not a problem anymore with the Wacom One. They removed that entire ecosystem of problems. It's gone,
Yeah, so along with being powerful, professional, and portable, no more overheated crotch with the Wacom One.
And that's why we are proud to have them as sponsors for this week and every week over at Wacom at wacom.com. And Bradley J., what is our first question for this week?
Well, this one comes in from Peter Tarkalich, who says, "Hey, Brad and Dave, back in 2017, Brad helped me to make the decision via webcomics.com to walk away from my comic of nearly 12 years. My life priorities had gotten to be too difficult to balance with the comic and my Patreon, and I was suffering from creative burnout. Putting down the stylus and walking away was tough, but ultimately the best thing for my mental and physical health. Now, almost 5 years later, I'm getting back to a point where I'm thinking about going back to the drawing board. My webcomic is long form, and I left off about halfway of the way through the story. So obviously my knee-jerk thought is to pick up where I left off because there's more story to tell. However, there's part of me that looks back over a decade plus of comics and sees where things can be improved with everything I've learned and potentially garner me a new audience more efficiently. So, what do you think is the best road to take? Do I continue on and finish the story since I'm closer to the end? Do I start over with a cleaner art style, tighter writing, and more of a plan than I originally started with? Or do I do some combination of both of these? For example, keeping one on the public-facing side and keeping one as a Patreon exclusive. Thanks for your time and all you guys do. So here's a person, Dave, that took our advice and said, hey, if it's not working, if it's causing you mental trauma and even physical trauma, it's okay to take a break and step back. Peter has done this, and now he's ready to come back. And he's trying to figure out what's the best way to come back. Give Peter some thoughts.
Well, this might not be the happy answer that you wanted, but I would like to propose a third option, which is
you and I are thinking exactly the same thing. I think. What are you going to say?
You have spent 12 years on this project.
Yep.
You decided after a lot of consternation and well put in thought to step away from it.
Yep.
My advice to you, having seen similar situations in, I don't know, a dozen friends in the cartooning and art world, is to do something new.
Yes.
I know that is not necessarily what you want to hear. And I know that just based on every conversation I ever had with a friend that came back to an old project, you're not going to listen to it. I kind of know that too. You're still going to do it, even though I say do something new. But my strong advice is to do something new. This is the exact situation I have seen I'm not kidding, multiple times with friends where they think they had one good idea and it was when they were 19 and that now they've been putting in 10, 12, 15 years on it. And the only comic they'll ever have is that one idea and I've just got to do it or I've got to finish it or people are clamoring for it. Well, they're not really clamoring for it. They weren't clamoring for it 5 years ago and they're probably not clamoring for it now. So really it's just your sense of completionism that wants to finish it. Do something new. Brad, what do you think about this?
I was going to give Peter exactly the same advice. And
really?
Also, we need to talk about, and I'm surprised actually that you and I are so close on our answers here. But there's also something else that as I was listening to the way you were parsing this, there's also a sense of failure, and it shouldn't be. Right? Yes. It's unhelpful.
It's unwarranted. Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. Unwarranted sense of failure when you take a step back from a project. And as much as we tell you, and we've covered this topic several times on the show where we say to people, hey, this isn't working. Take a step back, stop this for a moment. And there's always a sense of failure connected to that. And there shouldn't be, because you're actually making a very smart decision by stopping something that just isn't working, whether it isn't getting out to the type of the amount of readers that you were hoping for, or it isn't really working for you as a creator. There's always a sense of failure there. And this reaction of, I'm going to restart that, I'm going to bring it back and make it better than ever. It's an attempt to turn that failure around. So it becomes a success story, right? The problem is, for all of the reasons that Peter already knows about, that he's already mentioned in this whole thing, the art wasn't good, the writing wasn't good. And of course, this thing was not catching fire with an audience. For all of those reasons and a whole lot more, going back to that old relationship that you had is a recipe for disaster. Instead, I'm going to tell you to take all those things that you learned and start a brand new thing that has nothing to do with that thing. In fact, I'm going to even tell you to go one step further. I want this to be as different from that old project as the other one, because I'm one step ahead of you, Peter. I know the next thing you're going to do something set in the same universe.
Yes. Oh God, I've seen this. Yes.
You're okay. Brad told me I'm not going to do this thing. I'm going to do something in a brand new universe, or in the same universe, but a brand new story, or new characters, or a side character. There's 100 ways you're going to try to parse this so that you can have your cake and eat it too. Don't do it. If you were doing a medieval D&D comic, I want you to do a space opera. If you were doing romance, I want you to do action. I literally want you to go as far away from that within reason, as far away from that as possible. Okay, because I don't want you to fall into those same traps. And I want you to have the experience of starting something from the ground up, knowing now what you knew then. In other words, instead of trying to fix problems from then and to take somebody, that was drawn with a brown hat and say, well, I'm going to draw this character with a blue hat now. No. It's not about that brown hat or the blue hat. It's about setting up these characters and relationships right the first time. And then going forward, all that stuff that you earned. And again, take that failure aspect out of it. That wasn't a failure. That was training. That training brought you this new moment. Now start completely fresh with a new relationship and go forward from there.
Now, I want to counterpoint this by people might say, well, Dave, you rebooted Sheldon at one point, and Brad, you rebooted Evil Inc. at one point. Yep. And those are both valid points. Those are valid considerations. But let's talk about what those were. Yeah. Sheldon was working for me. Evil Inc. was working for Brad, or cartooning in general was working for Brad, and aspects of Evil Inc. were working for Brad. We hadn't quit. It had found an audience. We liked it. We just wanted to tackle it better than we had done it before. But now let's compare that with this scenario, because I think I don't want to name any names, but I have known many friends who have had this exact situation where it almost becomes a sunk cost fallacy, where you're like, I have put in 12 years on this. I've got to finish the story. Surely the world is crying out for me to finish the story. Well, I don't even need to know the details. Honest to God, I don't even need to know the details. The fact that you stepped away from it, the fact that audiences weren't clamoring for it, the fact that it never really brought you financial success means that was, as Brad said, a great learning project. You cut your teeth on that project. So thank that. It's kind of like Marie Kondo. Thank the project, appreciate what the project brought you, put it aside and do a new project, because that one didn't work. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely right. In other words, again, take that sense of failure away and
it's not a failure.
Look at this as an opportunity, not an opportunity to go back and prove the world wrong, or to say this wasn't a failure after all. Take a look at that as in the most positive terms ever. This is my opportunity to do something brand new. You really can't compare that to where I was when I rebooted Evil Inc., or where Dave was when he took another twist on Sheldon. Those are two different things. This was somebody who stopped doing something because it not only wasn't working for him, and again, he was in pain. This was a person who was facing a lot of creative burnout, a lot of physical and mental torment. And it just wasn't catching on with readers. Yep. That's a completely different thing. This is an opportunity now to take all of that and put it into a fresh start.
Now, I want to drill down on this, and this is not in any way to belabor the point, but having said all of this, I think both Brad and I suspect you're not going to do this. You are still going to double down and be like, no, I just want to finish the project. Brad and Dave don't know the specifics of this. They don't get it. I just got to, people want me to finish. I've gotten an email where someone says they want the story to finish, right? It's the same thing of like, hey, when are you going to make this as a t-shirt? You've gotten one email until you're taking that as your anchor, that you've got to finish it. I want to reemphasize that I have seen friends do this in cartooning multiple times, where they think the idea that they had 10 years ago, 20 years ago is the only idea of worth they're ever going to have. And so they keep doubling down on like, nope. And I got a slightly different version of this with this relaunch. Now I see what the problem was. I had everybody in polka dots. They should have been in stripes. Now it's going to go gangbusters. Yeah. And as an outsider looking in, as a friend, you're like, no, this was the project you cut your teeth on. Go to a new project. And no matter how many times you take them out to lunch or you do this or that, and they don't listen and they go back to the same project. Yeah. It's almost like a friend in an abusive relationship. You're like, just please, Lee, you've got to start a new relationship, that kind of thing.
But you're not going to be able to convince that person to do any different any more than an agent was able to sit across the table from a young Bobby Boris Pickett after he had charted with the Monster Mash and say, you know what you should do? You know what you should do?
It was a monster mash. The monster mash. It was a great old
You should do something different. Instead, take a look at Bobby. Bobby's actually a pretty good example of what we're talking about here because...
By the way, this is an amazing... to give everyone context, Brad and I have been talking about Monster Mash all morning. Yes. And the fact that Brad just rolled the Monster Mash into this discussion is chef's kiss perfect to me. I am so proud of you as a friend. I am honored to be part of this conversation. Keep going.
Well, yeah, so Bobby Boris Pickett had charts with the Monster Mash, and it is a big hit. What does he do? He comes back with Monster Holiday, which, by the way, this is back when they released him in singles. The backside of Monster Holiday was Monster Motion. Do we start to and we start to see a formula here? It's a monster and a type of dance, right? And all of these songs are the same thing. It starts with a drum beat, boom, pop, pop, boom, pop. Bum, bum, bum. And then it's Boris coming in with his Boris Karloff impersonation with a talk up, and then the music begins. So Monster Holiday released in 1962. Then Blood Bank Blues with the backside Me and My Mummy. That one didn't even chart.
Blues with the backside Me and My Mummy.
Me and My Mummy. Then he came out with a whole album, the original Monster Mash, featuring such singles as, listen to this, The Werewolf Watusi and the Monster Swim. Also, Scully Gully, the Monster Minuet, the Transylvania Twist, which I looked up. It's an instrumental. I looked at Transylvania Twist and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. Even Dracula is talking about it in the Monster Mash. Horrible. Sinister Stomp, Bella's Bash. And then in 1985, still holding on. And by the way, look at the parallels here. Still holding on to this concept. In 1985, with American culture experiencing a growing awareness of rap music, according to Wikipedia, Pickett released the Monster Rap, which describes the mad scientist trying to teach Frankenstein how to talk. He keeps going back to the well. It's like he's had this one idea, and he keeps trying to recapture that initial flavor, that initial success, that initial excitement he had. There's what did I just read off there? A dozen different iterations of one idea, trying to recapture it.
Yeah, imagine being. Okay, so it's 1985, and he tries, what was it called? The Monster Rap? Is that what it was called?
Yes.
Imagine his grandkids being like, Grandpa, no. Grandpa, no. Listen, we love you. The Monster Mash worked in 1963. You had that. Let it go, Grandpa. Yeah. Just let it go.
Yeah. Just let it go.
The kids are going to love the Monster Rap. Oh, geez.
Hold on.
Oh, yeah. Come on in.
Hello? It's Dave. You're not going to believe this. It's Boris Pickett, Bobby Boris Pickett, and
Bobby Boris Pickett is here.
He's right here. He's been listening to this whole. He's got some thoughts about redoing your comic. He says first to give him a drum beat. So I guess we got to give him a drum beat.
Are you setting me up to do Boris? Is that what's happening? I just need to know if I'm being prompted or if I'm the support staff on this one.
No, I want you to do the drums and just do my drums over there. I was writing in my room late one night when I tried again to get it right. It worked before, I could do it once more, but my readers all said that it was a snore. It was a crash. It was a comic crash. It was a crash. It made my teeth go gnash. It was a crash. It was a comic crash. It was a crash. I had written trash, so I looked at my precious work I did, trying to find inspiration that might have been hid. I opened my brain and looked around inside, and I said, what the hell, maybe I'll just redraw my old shit.
I was wondering, my God, we had this conversation 20 minutes ago, and you cranked out those bad lyrics in 20 minutes. Good on you. Good on you.
I was just writing and writing and
I
writing.
had no idea what was. By the way, I was just a kid being pulled along at Disneyland. I had no idea what was happening. Where are we going? Space Mountain? All right, fine. We're going there. That's fine. But yeah, like, so to put a capstone on this, don't be Boris. Don't try to go back to the well. Like, whatever magic you had, you gave it 12 years of effort, and that's admirable. That really is admirable. You gave it 12 years. Yes. And by the way, the 12 years are instructive because I might say something different if you gave it a year and then you stepped away. And I might say at a year, like, you know what? Maybe you just needed a little bit of time and go back to that. But 12 years is a significant investment. You gave it your best. You found that it was not rewarding to you. In fact, it was emotionally and mentally and physically exhausting. Mm-hmm. It clearly didn't generate the readership you hoped or the income you hoped. Those are all the signs. I say this as a friend and with love. Those are all the signs that it's time to take what you learned on that project and go to a new one.
Absolutely. So Dave, and by the way, don't let the fact that we were goofing around and making songs and stuff, that was all for jokes. The real moral of this whole story is what Dave said. Take that as a learning experience and move forward. Having said that, Dave, we've got time in the first half for one more question. And this one comes in from Brian King. And it's a simple question, but I think it's got some worth here. What's the best way to connect with other creators at comic conventions?
That's it? That's the question?
Yep. Just how do I connect? Like we've said a lot of times on the show that I don't think comic conventions are a very good idea. But let's say, for example, that Brian's taken this and instead of getting a table, and I'm just guessing here, he says, I'm just going to go get a ticket and just connect with other comic creators. What's the best way to do that?
Gotcha. Okay. So the reason why this caught me off guard was A, the question was so short, but B, I'm very much of the emotional place. And Brad, tell me if you're like this right now, where 2 years into the pandemic, I'm like, hey, Brad, quick question. Dave Kellett here, writing from Los Angeles, California. Can you remind me, how do I talk to people? I forget how to do that. I have forgotten how to talk. I saw my neighbor the other day and I froze. I didn't know what to do. Do I open my mouth and make the gums flap? I forgot how to do this whole thing.
No, you're not wrong. I've experienced the same thing. Like when my wife started inviting people to come and have drinks on the deck, they sat down and I looked at them and I'm like, what comes next? You know, I don't know. I don't have anything over here, you know?
Yeah. This is probably a bigger question for all of us in terms of getting back out and socializing. So it's worth just reminding everyone about the basics. If you're trying to meet other cartoonists at conventions, lovely. That's a perfectly lovely idea. I've met Brad at a convention. I've met many of my good cartooning friends at conventions. I would give a couple of standard bits of advice. You can certainly walk up to them at their booth and say a quick hello, but remember that they have paid for that space. So it's a quick hello, a quick introduction. If no one is around, you can do 1 or 2 sentences. But as always, read the room. If they're trying to sell, just because they're not busy right now, doesn't mean they don't want to become busy. And so they're trying to actively entice people to sell or to buy, rather. So just keep that in mind. I think always applicable, read the room is good for conversation as it goes. Are they enjoying it? Are they giving you signals that, well, it's a gentle pat on the shoulder, it's been lovely chatting with you and time to move on? Then you move on. If you find that it seeds any sort of spark of conversation, then maybe swing by around the next day of the convention, that kind of thing. You don't necessarily have to keep coming by every 15 minutes. That gets creepy real quick. But that's sort of my starter kit. Brad, what would you say in terms of meeting other cartoonists?
Well, I just want to underline situational awareness, and that is to know what's going on around you. And what you said was brilliant. Even if there's nobody at the table right now, does not mean that this person does not want to be selling, right? They want to be doing something other, perhaps, or, there's been times when there's just nothing going on the floor and somebody comes up and talks and it's like, well, this is a great way to pass some time other than sitting here and watching the tumbleweeds go by, So having that situational awareness in function is a really good thing. And just because there's nobody there right now does not mean that the person behind the booth isn't trying to get other people to stop. So making it brief, being complimentary with an honest compliment. In other words, if you want to make a connection with somebody who's doing comics, it's not a bad idea to have read this person's comic and to be able to compliment it in a meaningful way. In other words, just like, hey, you're looking at the person's banner right there and you, oh yeah, I like your line work. No, you should have read a few comics that this person has done so you can talk about it intelligently.
Well, what I was going to say, that's exactly true, Brad. Instead of being like, oh, Brad Geiger, I love your style. Well, that's a perfectly lovely compliment, but it doesn't get you anywhere. How about this? Brad, I got to tell you, I've been reading you and I've really realized the importance of grounding my situations with detailed backgrounds. And I got to thank you as a cartoonist. You have taught me, even though you never intended to do that. And now what artist can't take that as a compliment and springboard a quick comment or two about that? Like that springboards conversation. I got to say, though, the leading with a compliment can't be undersold enough because it's a perfectly lovely and pleasant way to jump into a conversation. Every cartoonist that is behind the booth is there for both making income and for, frankly, validation. So if you're leading with a compliment, what a lovely way to start the conversation, don't you think, Brad?
Right. And then once you've done that, again, with the situational awareness, chart in your brain how this conversation is going. Are they readily coming back with more lines for you? Are they saying stuff about you? Are they engaging, or are they giving you kind of one or two word answers that just say, yeah, well, thank you very much? If they're not leading you into further conversation, that's your cue to say, well, listen, thank you very much, blah, blah. I appreciate talking to you. If you want to leave a business card or something, that's your purview. I've always said, don't leave a business card unless you and I have talked about doing business.
Right. Me too. Right? Yeah.
First thing I do, and I'm honest about this. First thing I do when somebody hands me a business card, that's just kind of like we've talked for 10 minutes and now he's going to hand me a business card. First thing I do as soon as he walks away is throw it away. I don't need a business card. I don't want to carry it around. It's just more stuff for me to keep track of. Now, if you and I have said, hey, we should do a comic together. We should do this together. I've got an idea for this and that, social media, marketing, blah, blah, blah. There might be 20 different ways that I might want to get in touch with you later. Then you hand me a business card. Now I'm putting that in my pocket. If we talked about the weather and you had a couple nice compliments and I maybe seen your work and blah, blah. I don't need a business card for that. Right?
Well, part of Brad, don't you get the sense, Brad, because I get handed business cards all the time at Comic-Con. I'm like, all right, thanks so much. Boing! It goes right into the trash can.
Yeah.
I'm like you, is that I don't need business cards, but I think what happens is everyone, younger Dave Kellett included, it feels like this. Well, I spent money at gotprint.com buying 300 business cards. I got to give these out. Here you go. Hey, thanks for the hot dog at Comic-Con. Here's my business card. Right. To Brad's point, business cards really, for me, and again, might be mirror marketing. I don't know. Business cards for me we are about to conduct business. We need to follow up.
Right.
But if we've just chatted, I think you have to be able to chart the average human relationship, which is, we're going to talk 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times in person over different Comic-Cons before I think of you as an acquaintance and we need to follow up on something, right? It's not going to be hey, I talked to that guy for 2 seconds, or hey, I met her at that convention for 2 seconds, and now we're conducting massive amounts of business together. That's just not how human relationships work.
Yeah. And so so now the next thing that is going to come up is you, of course, want this other person to know that you're a cartoonist too. And here's the name of the thing that you do. And here's the URL and me, right? Again, situational awareness. You obviously can mention, you should be introducing yourself by name in the first sentence. Hey, my name is blah, blah. And at some point, as you're going down the line, now and you see that this person is receptive, those two things have happened so far. Now you can say, by the way, I also do a comic. It's called No Shoes for Tuesday. And then you watch the reaction. Okay. If they're super excited, enthusiastic, that's your cue to keep talking, right? If they're like, oh, well, that's really nice. That's cool. Comics is fun. That means time to wrap it up. Now, you can do any number of these things, right? And but the point is, this is going to be a short conversation. This is not going to turn into a love affair. Right. This is your introduction. This is step one. Okay. You've introduced yourself. You've said a couple nice things. You've mentioned that you're in comics. Time to wrap it up, and off you go. And that's it. If you went into this situation thinking that you were going to get a dinner date out of it, or he was going to say, hey, meet me out at the bar tonight, or she was going to say, hey, a bunch of us are going over to this place, you should join us. If you went into this thinking that was going to happen, you might have had some mismatched ideals as to what this is all about. This is just an introduction. Okay. And then what happens, Dave and I were not instant friends. Well, we got along together real well, but after that first,
I'm thinking back, we were not instant friends, nor did we necessarily gravitate. Remember, keep in mind, Brad, that was also a convention where you and I met like 40 cartoonists right away.
Right.
And so that's also part of the thing is, keep in mind when you're introducing yourself to whatever cartoonist that you would like to get to know, they are meeting with and talking with hundreds, if not 1,000 people that day at that Comic-Con, depending on how busy their booth is. So it's not, what am I saying for you? Okay, so I'm gonna flip the script a little bit. I was just watching the Apple TV adaptation of Foundation, Brad, right? And the Emperor is talking about people coming to meet the Emperor. Yeah. And he goes, remember, for you, this is just a meeting. For them, it is the most important meeting they'll ever have in their life. Right. And so the only reason I mention that is for that cartoonist that you're trying to talk to, they are talking to 1,000 people that day, selling, meeting, publishers, printers, source merch, people that source merch, old fans, friends from high school that have walked up to them. I get done decompressing at the end of a San Diego Comic-Con, for example, Brad, and I can't even remember all the major conversations that I had that day. Sometimes I'll be talking to my wife like 4 days later and be like, oh my God, so-and-so from high school came up to the booth and I forgot to mention it to you. And she'll be like, oh, wow, that's great. That's how many conversations I have that my brain can't even remember it. So what I'm getting at is it is adjust your expectations that it might not be, like Brad said, instant friendship or instant dinner. If there are sparks, then great. Swing back around the next convention, throw another joke or two in. That's great. Maybe if things are going great, day 2 or 3, you could say, hey, let's grab a coffee. You want to say something quick that someone can easily duck out of. I wouldn't suggest a meal, because meals are, it's like dating. Meals are a big commitment. You know, once you get to a meal, that's a big commitment. What am I missing, Brad? What else is going on?
Well, you touched on it, but I just want to underline it. This isn't going to happen the first convention. I wouldn't even try for anything. If it's a 3-day convention, I wouldn't even try for anything by day 3. This is something that's going to be built up over many months, maybe even many years.
Many years, I would say.
Being realistic. Yes, if you want to drop them an email or drop them a line on social media, hey, it was really nice to talk to you at Comic-Con, and then reference something specific that you folks talked about. Okay, that's fine. But you can get creepy real quick with that. So be very, very careful about, that whole message on social media saying, it was so nice talking to you. I remember what you said, that it just, again, take it easy.
Slow it down.
Even that very polite follow-up, you have to have a little bit of social awareness, because it can get creepy real quick. This is something that's going to happen if you're going to build relationships in this first-person manner by meeting them at comic conventions. It's going to take place over a long period of time. If you're walking into your first convention thinking you're going to have friends by Sunday night and you're all going to go out drinking, it's probably not going to happen unless you just meet somebody and hit it off. But chances are this is something you're going to be building for a while.
It's funny that you should say years, and I want to relate a personal anecdote to this, because Brad and I have talked about our friendship, but it's worth mentioning two other dear friends of mine in comics who I don't see enough of, frankly, especially in the last couple of years. Dylan McConis and Katie Lane, two of my favorite people in comics. When I first met them, it was probably, Brad, I'm not kidding, 4 or 5 years until all three of us could collectively say the word friend. It was associate. Yeah. It was someone you knew, someone you met. I talked to them every year at Emerald City Comic Con. I would talk to them occasionally at other Comic Cons if we bumped into each other at different things. But now, 10 years later, it takes a while. Like many things in life that are worth doing, it takes a while. And so I think Brad is very correct in saying, don't go in expecting immediate business partnerships, immediate friendships. You are laying the groundwork for slowly building human relationships that develop into business or friendships or relationships that mix both. And so take it slow, minimize the creepiness if you can, and up the friendship value in terms of the easy breezy friendship that you can offer in the world. Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics. So, Bradley, turning the page, we have a new topic that you wanted to bring onto the show. Yeah. As always, comes from the wise pages of Facebook. Facebook, where all of humanity's greatest repositories of knowledge can be found. Facebook, my favorite of all the social media platforms, not ruining anything about our society. Brad, what is the topic you wanted to bring in from Facebook, of all places?
Well, this is something that I read on a webcomics group on Facebook. Okay, this was a group that was set up specifically for web cartoonists. And I'm not going to give the person's name because I don't want to call them out. But this whole thing is so fascinating, and it brings up so many topics that I really wanted to talk about it on the show because it underlines some stuff that we had been talking about. So here's how the post goes. It's just so weird. I can't figure it out. Earlier this year, I was paying for Facebook ads, and I cast a very wide international net with dozens of countries on my list because why not? All right, now I'm going to pause right there. You've heard us say on this show, you should not be spending money on advertising because you don't understand how to spend it wisely. And I've just got to pause here. If you're met with a business problem, and your answer is because why not? Put the money back in your wallet. Put the money in your bank. We are at least going to get interest on it.
Brad, you've never seen me at an ice cream stand. Because why not? Because why not? That's my response to all the ice creams.
With ice cream, that's an appropriate answer. With you spending money on advertising, that is not an appropriate answer. Because why not?
You're right. Absolutely right. Yeah.
But yes, he said, picking this up, they said, first, I was getting tons of what appeared to be bots from Brazil that were liking this ad or this page. So I took Brazil off the list. Then I was getting tons of bots from India. So I took India off the list. Then it was Nigeria. Then it was Ghana. Then it was Kenya. Then it was Mexico. By the way, I hope
he was advertising in all those countries?
Yes. Because why not?
No.
Because why not? Dave.
Oh no, he really is like me at the ice cream stand. Okay, because why not? Keep going.
And I can just only hope that this was like one big ad buy instead of like, well, Brazil didn't work out. I'll put another couple $100 in. Oh, now I'm dealing with Nigeria. I'm hoping this was all one experience, although I don't know.
Right.
At any given time, once I took one offending country off the list, another would take its place, flooding my likes with apparent bots. I did get a few actual human readers in some of these places, but still, okay. Oh, and at this point, we've got to take a pause, okay? Because if all those likes were going on this person's Facebook page for their comic, it's completely destroyed that page for the algorithm, because now there's no way he can reach those actual humans, because with all those bots flooding the page, he can never get on the right side of the algorithm. It's always going to skew the algorithm. He'll never get an organic post again, because there's no way that he can reach the humans because the bots are crowding them all out. You understand?
That's a valid point. Yeah.
So this person has screwed up his Facebook page completely. Unless there's a way to remove those likes, and believe me, I've never looked into this because I noped out at the first sentence, but unless there's a way to remove them, this page is borked, okay? But the post isn't over yet.
Wait, did you just say bork?
I did
As
say
in the
borked.
failed Supreme Court nominee bork? Is that what? Wow, what a reference.
Yes,
wow,
did.
keep going. All right.
So I stopped running Facebook ads for the time being. First, now listen, we got to pause. This was a good decision. Stopping the Facebook ads was a very good decision. We've got to note that.
Stopping what you're doing was the smartest thing that you did. All right, keep going.
Unfortunately, that we're only halfway through the sentence.
Oh no!
And now I'm running Instagram ads. You know, Dave, Instagram, that company that's owned by Facebook.
Right.
Now we're running Instagram ads. So, and going back to reading. So who's flooding me now? Jamaica. Seriously, I have dozens of countries on the list of that targeted promo. Again, why? Because why not? Jamaica's just one of them. Yet 99.99% of the attention, what little I get, again, let's not forget that, what little I get seems to be coming from there. Unlike
oh my God,
Facebook,
the more you go on with this sentence, Brad, the more my hives are starting to build up as you're reading this. Keep going, but geez Louise, I'm getting anxious about this. Keep going.
Well, this is the culmination. Unlike the Facebook, a higher percentage of these accounts seem to be from real, actual human beings as opposed to bots, but it's hard to tell for sure. And either way, what gives? Why does this keep happening? At any given time, there has to be one country in the list that just completely pushes all the others aside. Does anyone else experience this? I don't get it. And that's the end of the post. Now, because this is a Facebook group, it immediately gets spammed with bots. Keep going. Or even worse, he gets all kinds of bad advice. He gets the advice he gets of just skimming, because I was getting the shakes, was like, well, listen, the only way to get engagement is to pay for ads, and you just got to put up with it. That was the gist of, I'm not reading that one verbatim, but that was the gist of some of the responses he got. Well, the only way you can get engagement is to buy ads, and this is just what comes of it. And so there's a lot of things that we need to underline that are themes of the show. Number one, you should not be putting money in advertising unless you've got a much better handle on it than this. Because not only has this person wasted money, and probably wasted, let's face it, hundreds?
At least
probably?
a couple hundreds. Yeah.
Well, not only has this person wasted hundreds of dollars, but unless there's a way to remove all of the bots accurately, this person has screwed up a Facebook page, probably, and an Instagram account, right? Because if now you've got a whole bunch of bot followers on your Instagram, if that's what you're trying to do, is to gain followers, it's going to skew their algorithm. You're never going to get a favorable score on that algorithm, because those bots are never going to come back and like the second post that you do, or the third post. They are just going to be there to stack the algorithm against you. This person not only has wasted a lot of money, they've potentially, and I don't know the details, but my guess is they've potentially screwed up their Facebook and their Instagram outreach as well. And it's all because they really didn't get a good handle on what they were doing. And they went to a Facebook group to get information, and the information they got was even worse. And this is where, again, I'm going to tell you the value, and I've got to say it. The ComicLab Discord server, where we have, as part of the ComicLab Patreon, where we have moderated conversations. Like if somebody comes in and gives bad advice,
spouts nonsense,
somebody's going to come in and correct that.
Right.
Right. If somebody says, hey, I use this new technique that you guys talked about on the show, and then they show something completely different, chances are I'm going to weigh in and say, hey, this is great, wonderful. You're not really doing what we talked about, and can correct that and say, here's what we were actually talking about. Because having misinformation and have people sharing bad information, it doesn't do anybody any good. And so a well moderated by people who know what they're doing, people who have experience and chops in this, who can come in and say, this is accurate. This maybe isn't so accurate, and it isn't even about the moderators. Just yesterday on ComicLab Discord, somebody was asking on international shipping. And my answer was, listen, if you can beat USPS, go ahead and do it. Dave Melke came in with a call that was even better for something that I wasn't as familiar with, but I know Melke well enough to know that kind of knows what he's talking about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't about me knowing everything. It was right. It's about coming in and being able to moderate those things that I can clearly see are not as accurate to make sure that the good stuff comes through. That's really important. Not only having a better idea of how you're doing this, Dave, but getting your answers from a place where you don't know you're getting just more terrible information.
Yeah, I mean, underlining the central points of this Facebook post is number one, don't pay for advertising.
Yeah.
We give away our comics for free. We're giving away entertainment for free. If the simple act of someone has enjoyed your comic can't get them to share that comic with their friends, a percentage of people obviously, can't get a percentage of people to share that with their friends or pass it along or retweet it or like it or share it in some different way on a different social media platform. If that's not working for you, then advertising sure as shit is not going to work for you, right? We are giving it away for free. And as we talked about last week, we all have the audience that we've earned. And so I say this with humility. I've been on the internet now for 20 years, and I have earned X amount of audience. I wish it was much bigger. I wish it was huge. I always am under the disillusion that if I could just get it in front of 1 million people, then I would retain 1 million people. Even though I know in my heart of hearts, if I could get it in front of 1 million people, I would retain 1,000. Whatever it was. Right. So the scale of advertising doesn't add up for what you hope it will be. The money of advertising doesn't add up for what you're spending versus the return. The platform is set up, frankly, only for major spends to win. It is meant to take your money as a small fry, but it's meant to work for Skechers and Coca-Cola and GM because they're spending tens of millions and have a personalized asset manager at Facebook who will guide them through it and who will, frankly, make sure that their ads are really working. None of that will happen for you with your $100 spend, your $1,000 spend, frankly, your $10,000 spend on Facebook. Please do not advertise your comic.
Right. Now, there are some cases where I could actually kind of see it. For example, merchandise. If you've got merchandise to sell, you've got a warehouse full of merchandise and you got to move it. I could see experimenting with that. I could even see it in the case of a Kickstarter. Here's the problem. For every
I would argue against that, but go ahead, keep going.
Well, let me see what you say about this. For every nickel that you spend on advertising, it's got to come back dressed up as a dime. If I'm going to spend a nickel on advertising, I've got to do 10 cents worth of business. Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words, if I'm going to spend $100 on an ad buy, I've got to be confident that I'm going to get an extra $200 in purchases that I couldn't have gotten otherwise. Thoughts?
Okay. Here's my thoughts, and this is one of the rare cases where Dave's gonna get cussy. If I have, let's just make up numbers. If I have 10,000 readers and I'm trying to get 1,000 of them to back my Kickstarter,
right?
And I can't even get 1,000. But these are people that come to my websites or check out my social media or followed me for years and years and years. Yeah. If I've got 10,000 readers and I can't even get 1,000 of them to back my Kickstarter, Brad, how the fuck am I going to spend advertising money to get them to join my Kickstarter? People that have never read my comic, have no have no emotional connection to my comic. How the fuck does that money come back to me in any way, shape, or form? Pardon my French, but that's ridiculous money. Yeah. Stop spending money on Facebook. It is not a website that's working for you. It's working for Facebook.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you at all. And it's all part of that fallacy, that magic wand fallacy that we talked about earlier in the show, where if I could wave a magic wand and give you 1 million visitors to your website today, would you wave it? And of course, everybody thinks that the only thing holding them back is that not enough people have seen it.
Not enough people are seeing it.
And that's the fallacy that plays into that ad buy that you were just talking about. The only reason they're not backing the Kickstarter is not enough people have seen it. Well, no, the problem is they've seen it. They don't want it. You're not retaining those people.
Yeah, they see exactly.
So you spending money is not gonna change that.
Spending money to make money when you were already giving away a comic for free for years on a repeated and regular basis of quality.
Yeah.
The problem is not that you haven't been spending money. The problem is that it's A, hard to convince people. B, it's hard to retain people. C, you go down the list of all the things. Spending money on advertising is the worst. And oh God, if you must spend advertising on and thinking that that's going to grow your audience, at least do it a smart way and do an artist-to-artist sponsorship like Chris Halbeck does with his advertising on Instagram. At least then you're getting a personalized approach. You're not lost in an algorithm. You have no results of which you can check in on. You're getting an artist who will promote you on their feed. But I think Chris handles that well. I don't do it myself, but I think Chris handles that well. And so do something like that. Don't do... God, also get off Facebook. This is me becoming a grandfather. Let's all just get off Facebook. It is a terrible website. Let's just all just leave it. Keep going, Brad.
And don't be surprised when the problems on Facebook are carried over to Instagram, because Facebook owns Instagram. And of course, it's going to be the same system. And set up for the same reasons. So without belaboring that, but since we did talk about Kickstarter just for a minute there, Dave, I'm going to use that as an opportunity to segue into a Kickstarter question we've had that I think has some really interesting permutations. This one coming in from Christopher Murrin, who says, "Dear Brad and Dave, I sometimes see Kickstarter campaigns with several reward tiers offering different combinations of rewards at the same price point. Do you think this is okay, or do you recommend a unique price point for every tier?" So here's the deal. There might be 3 $10 tiers, and they've got different rewards at each one, but they're each $10. Good or bad or indifferent? What's your thoughts?
Okay, so I just got done a second ago saying that you've got these 10,000 imaginary readers and you've working your butt off to get those 1,000 to your Kickstarter site. Yeah. Now, here's the other dirty little secret that people don't like to think about. Yeah. Even if they love you, even if they want to back you, they don't want to spend a lot of time figuring that Kickstarter out. You have to make it so easy so that if they're about to get off their bus, but they've got their phone in their hand and they're thinking about kickstarting you, make it easy for them to pledge right then. So one way you can do it is to differentiate tiers. And so if you've got 3 tiers at $10 by whatever reason of cost of goods sold or expenses to you that you necessitate 3 different things coming in at $10 price points, then what you do is you make one $9, one $10, one $11. Make it so clear and easy for them to be able to jump in on the level that they know they want. They scroll down real quick to the visual chart that you have of like, okay, I want to get the magnet and the 2 stickers, and that's $9. Then they go over to the thing. They know it's $9. You've made it easy for them. There's not 3 $10 tiers to get them confused. I think that's the way to do it. Brad, what do you think?
I'm going to disagree just a little bit. The first part I agree with 100%. You've got to make it simple. We talked about earlier that we were kind of making fun. I saw somebody doing Patreon outreach and there were so many problems with it. It bugged me, right? And I reached out to this person and said, listen, I got some thoughts. You can tell me no, but I've got some thoughts. And this person posted an update on Twitter, and ever since we had that conversation, it's been steadily up. He might be doing 3, maybe 4 times as well as he was doing when we started. I shared that on social media, and I said, listen, there was no magic here. There was no magic. All I did was the stuff we talk about on ComicLab all the time. One of the first things I did was clear communication. Right. And that's really what we're talking about in this topic about Kickstarter.
Right. Absolutely.
Clear communication. Tell them the thing. And this is true of Patreon and Kickstarter. It's not about you. It's about them. They want to know what's in it for them.
Right.
They want to know what's in it for them, not what's in it for the artist, what's in it for them. So clear communication is the key to this. So this is where you and I are going to branch off just a little bit. I wouldn't have like a $9, a $10, an $11. I would make those reward tiers as simple as possible. Remember, when you're setting up a Kickstarter reward tier or a Patreon tier, the idea is you're trying to walk that person up a ladder. You start them at the bottom. You say, hey, would you like a PDF? And they go, of course I'd like a PDF. Great. For $5 more, you can get a PDF and a print of the book. I'd like a print of the book too. Great. Now you got them at the next level of the ladder. For $5 more, you could get an autographed copy of the book. I'd love an autographed copy of the book, right? And you keep them going up through steady increments, up the ladder, up the ladder, up the ladder, until you take them one step too far, inevitably, and they say, well, wait a minute, Brad's going to show up on my front lawn and do some flamenco dancing for an extra $300. I don't want that. Down the ladder, one rung. Okay. Then I've
heard that man sing Monster Mash. I do not want that.
Yeah. Then they go down one rung, and that's where they stay.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to do clear communication. So that's why I wouldn't do 9, 10, and 11. How would I deal with that? Instead, for me, it's Backer Kit. For you, I know it's Kickstarter's new add-on system. Mm-hmm. I would take all of those other things and tell them, if you want to add some of these on, here's how you do it. It's real simple. You always tell them it's real simple. And by the way, at this point, it kind of is. And if you want to get those other things in there, and you want to use this Kickstarter as a way to sell those items as well, you don't try to cram everything into your tiers and make these complicated tiers. Those tiers have to be one very clear ladder. Boom, 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 boom. Now those extras, that's for the add-on. You can do that through an add-on or through Backer Kit, all those other things, but leave that ladder alone.
Okay. I actually, even though you set this up that you had a slight disagreement, I actually totally agree with you. Clarity and simplicity of laddering people up is a great way. And I think partially why I made the mistake is I should clarify that, frankly, even better than a 9, a 10, and an $11 level, really what you should be doing is, instead of a bunch of a la carte offerings, really start to bundle them as they go up that ladder. So you can get the book, or you can get the book and the magnet, or you can get the book and the magnet and the pin, right? And so instead of being a bunch of a la carte things around $10, where each thing costs $10, you get people laddering up of like $10, $20, $30. The goal obviously being to get them so high up that they eventually get the Brad flamenco dancing. I think that's what I would want. I've been promised it for years and I haven't got it. And then don't forget to spend, I would say on average, between $3,000 and $6,000 on Facebook for your advertising. You're really going to want to juice those numbers. And boy, America's favorite website, zero misinformation, good for democracy, Facebook. I love it. Dave Keller, big endorsement over here. I don't know why I'm so filled with spite for Facebook today, but anyway, keep going. Any final thoughts, Brad, in terms of pricing for Kickstarter?
No final thoughts. However, we've got time for one more question, and I'm going to call an audible here, Dave. This is not what we planned, but I think this is a question that we can take in a little bit shorter time.
Sure.
And that is this one. This comes in from Tyler Mann, who says, what are some changes you tried or things you did differently that resulted in expanding your audience, maybe in a way you didn't think about? So what are some shortcuts, some tricks, some unexpected audience building things that we have done? And by the way, I'm going to say for the audience at home, I'm throwing this at Dave with no preparation. So if I'm catching you by surprise, that's okay. But I've got some thoughts.
No, I have some thoughts. One thing is, and this kind of goes to your shotgun approach to advertising that we talked about earlier. Yeah. Which is that, they're like, I said, why not? And I advertised in Brazil and Argentina, in Senegal, and part of it is all of us need to come to the conclusion that you're not trying to appeal to everyone. You're trying to appeal to someone. Right. And I know that might sound like some kind of cliche, but the truth is that we are in an increasingly niche audiences. And the best thing you can do in terms of growing your audience, surprisingly, is to write to your truths, write to the things that make you excited, write to the things that you're passionate about, and you could pour the most energy into. If you're only passingly familiar with cars, then and the true car lover culture, then don't suddenly start a comic about car culture and being a car lover.
Yeah.
It's like Brad writing about dogs. It just reads as untrue, like. But
You're
if
right.
I could write about, for example, Lord of the Rings all day long. I will do comics about Lord of the Rings because I freaking love Tolkien and literature more broadly speaking. I will do comics about literature. I love dog jokes. Brad can write his wheelhouses perfectly because they're what he's passionate about. And so he's not trying to write to everyone. I'm not trying to write to everyone. Yeah. We're writing to the specifics that we are passionate about. And frankly, one of the early learnings that I had in cartooning online was that the more I wrote for me, the more I found my tribe.
Yeah.
Right, Brad?
Yeah. Well, again, it all comes down to do a good comic and then also be a member of your community. Okay. Right. And unfortunately, like when I read this question and by the way, I'll say right off the bat, this may be unfair to Tyler, but when I read this question, what I hear is somebody looking for a shortcut. Somebody looking for a magic wand, Well, what are some of the ways you build an audience you built an audience and it surprised you in an unexpected way?
Right. Well, I was going to say I don't see that so much as a shortcut. I get where you're going at, but with a less I'm trying to draw down my level of suspiciousness from earlier in the podcast. In a less suspicious way, I think they're just saying, "Hey, give me an insight. What was surprising to you that you didn't think it was going to grow the audience?" And suddenly, I will say this, Tyler. I'll give you a very specific example. Two, actually. One was our family got a pug about 15 years ago, and I was like, you know what? I love this animal. This dog is delightful. I'm going to include a pug in the comic strip. I did it because, frankly, the pug brought me a lot of joy, and he was a goofy little weirdo, and it was fun. I was so pleasantly surprised in the way that everybody is whenever they introduce a cat or a dog into the comic strip, how much that suddenly spurs people to love the comic when there's a pet involved. Mm-hmm. I will say that was a surprise to me. It shouldn't have been, but it was. And I will say the second time was when Brad, if you remember, I was feeling tired of doing Sheldon. I was like, I don't want to do Sheldon right now. And so what I ended up doing was Anatomy of Animals and Anatomy of Authors, which was a totally different orthogonal concept that wasn't at all related to Sheldon. It was this weird out of left field thing. But I was doing it because that's what I wanted to do. And it brought in a whole different and fresh and unique audience who then went back and looked at the archives and be like, oh, what is this site Sheldon that this is on? This is very different. Yeah. So I'm sure the same thing has happened for you, Brad, when you went into a storyline or a character that you didn't expect would resonate in the way that it did. There's got to be examples of that for you.
Oh, certainly. But I think the themes here that we're seeing, other than doing your comic well, is following your vision as an artist. This is one time when we encourage mirror research, is when you're making creative decisions, right? What speaks to you very much? Mm-hmm. This is the time to make that mirror decision. Or that mirror marketing decision that we've talked about before. This is the time to follow your inner voice and do the thing that you really want to do. Again, if that pug in my hands would have been completely different. It wouldn't have been authentic. It wouldn't have been genuine coming from me.
Much the same way me writing romance in your comic. I literally cannot do it. We've seen me fail spectacularly trying to help you in writer's room. Yeah. We all have our wheelhouse. And the same is true is like looking backwards on it. No one would say like, I would never have said, what'll work is a stick figure comic that talks about physics and engineering a lot. Right, That's going to go gangbusters. By the way, if you tried to have Dave Kellett draw that, it would not work. It would not look right. It would not. And yet Randall had knocked that out of the park. And so everybody, what Brad and I are saying, everybody has their wheelhouse, their passion. And that's why I say you're not trying to write for everyone. You're trying to write for someone. And ideally that someone is you.
And I guess that's the true surprise there. If you're looking for a surprise, the surprise is that your inner voice is more resonant with an audience than you think it is, right? If there's any surprise that you can be looking for, that's it, is that your inner voice has more value than you give it credit for. So that's your takeaway in terms of this is to follow your voice. Do the comic you want to do. Remember, it's got to be good. You got to put the work in. But if you do that and really put that out in a way that you think that it should be done, you're gonna connect a lot better than you think it's gonna do. If there's any surprise, I think that's the surprise.
I like that a version of what you just said was because this is where I thought you were headed. Yeah. The surprise here, the real surprise, was the friends we made along the way. That's the real surprise here.
the real surprise.
The destination was the journey, it turns out, friends. Anyway, I've been Brad Geiger. This has been the Brad Geiger Story Hour.
No, the real surprise is the way I shoot my mouth off that I was able to make any friends at all along the way. But the one friend I did make, I am happy for, because he gets to sit here every Tuesday and do ComicLab with me. This is the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Well, your hosts have been my pal Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my good friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And a big reminder that today's sponsor was the wonderful folks at Wacom at wacom.com, the makers of the Cintiq and the Wacom One, which both Brad and I use and endorse. And the ComicLab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love ComicLab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode like this one from Kylock, who gave us a really nice review. Listen to this, Dave. Pure joy. ComicLab is an invaluable resource for any aspiring or professional comic creator. But more than that, it is a genuinely wonderful show for everyone. The joy, the friendship, humor, and the wit that Brad and Dave display in every episode never fails to brighten my week and make the world seem just a little better than it was before.
That genuinely got a smile out of me. I was trying not to smile and my lips were tightening. I was like, oh, I'm smiling. Darn it. I'm smiling.
Too late. I'm smiling.
But you know what, Brad? Kind words like that reminds you that, like, we don't advertise this show. We don't. In many respects, it is the kind words that folks share to friends who are also artists or art inclined. That the show is worth trying out. So as always, thank you guys for spreading the word, because that does do this show a great service. And thank you for the kind words. And ComicLab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/ComicLab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/ComicLab.
Could you imagine what his end game was? Whether it was like him appearing at the Hollywood Bowl with a 24-piece orchestra behind him doing the Monster Mash in a tuxedo.
God, Brad, that hits too close to home, because all of us as artists have put out a project where we're like, this is the one, this is it, this is gonna be the one that's gonna get it for me. And so I unfortunately relate entirely too much with a musician that puts out the monster hop skippy doo and think like, oh, people are gonna love the monster hop skippy doo. This is the one that's gonna get me my Hollywood Bowl performance. Meanwhile, he's sleeping in his one-bedroom apartment going, God damn it, why isn't monster hop skippy doo working?